The three negative utopias differ from each other in detail and emphasis. Zamayatin's We, written in the 20s, has more features in common with 1984 than with Huxley's Brave New World. We, and 1984, both depict the completely bureaucratized society in which man is a number and loses all sense of individuality. This is brought about by a mixture of unlimited terror. In Zamayatin's book, a brain operation is added eventually which changes man even physically, combined with ideological and psychological manipulation. In Huxley's work, the main tool for turning man into an automaton is the application of hypnoid mass suggestion, which allows dispensing with terror. One can say that Zamayatin's and Orwell's examples resemble more the Stalinist and Nazi dictatorships, while Huxley's Brave New World is a picture of the development of the Western industrial world, provided it continues to follow the present trend without fundamental change. In spite of this difference, there is one basic question common to the three negative utopias. The question is a philosophical, anthropological, and psychological one, and perhaps also a religious one. It is, can human nature be changed in such a way that man will forget his longing for freedom, for dignity, for integrity, for love? That is to say, can man forget that he is human? Or does human nature have a dynamism which will react to the violation of these basic human needs by attempting to change an inhuman society into a human one? It must be noted that the three authors do not take the simple position of psychological relativism, which is common to so many social scientists today. They do not start out with the assumption that there is no such thing as human nature, that there is no such thing as qualities essential to man, and that man is born as nothing but a blank sheet of paper on which any given society writes its text. They do assume that man has an intense striving for love, for justice, for truth, for solidarity, and in this respect they are quite different from the relativists. In fact, they affirm the strength and intensity of these human strivings by the description of the very means they present as being necessary to destroy them. In Zamayatin's We, a brain operation similar to lobotomy is necessary to get rid of the human demands of human nature. In Huxley's Brave New World, artificial biological selection and drugs are necessary, and in Orwell's 1984 it is the completely unlimited use of torture and brainwashing. None of the three authors can be accused of the thought that the destruction of humanity within man is easy. Yet, all three arrive at the same conclusion, that it is possible with means and techniques which are common knowledge today. In spite of many similarities to Zamayatin's book, Orwell's 1984 makes its own original contribution to the question, how can human nature be changed? I want to speak about some of the more specifically Orwellian concepts. I want to speak now about some of the more specifically Orwellian concepts, says Erich Fromm. The contribution of Orwell, which is most immediately relevant for the year 1961 and for the next 5 to 15 years, is the connection he makes between the dictatorial society of 1984 and atomic war. Atomic wars had first appeared as early as the 40s. A large-scale atomic war broke out about 10 years later, and some hundreds of bombs were dropped on industrial centers in European Russia, Western Europe, and North America. After this war, the governments of all countries became convinced that the continuation of the war would mean the end of organized society, and hence of their own power. For these reasons, no more bombs were dropped, and the three existing big power blocks merely continued to produce atomic bombs and stored them up against the decisive opportunity which they all believe will come sooner or later. It remains the aim of the ruling party to discover how to kill several hundred million people in a few seconds without giving warning beforehand. Orwell wrote 1984 before the discovery of thermonuclear weapons, and it is only a historical footnote to say that in the 50s the very aim which was just mentioned had already been reached. The atomic bomb which was dropped on the Japanese cities seems small and ineffective when compared with the mass slaughter which can be achieved by thermonuclear weapons with the capacity to wipe out 90% or 100% of a country's population within minutes. The importance of Orwell's concept of war lies in a number of very keen observations. First of all, he shows the economic significance of continuous arms production, without which the economic system cannot function. Furthermore, he gives an impressive picture of how a society must develop which is constantly preparing for war, constantly afraid of being attacked, and preparing to find the means of complete annihilation of its opponents. Orwell's picture is so pertinent because it offers a telling argument against the popular idea that we can save freedom and democracy by continuing the arms race and finding a stable deterrent. This soothing picture ignores the fact that with increasing technical progress, which creates entirely new weapons about every 5 years, and will soon permit the development of 100 or 1,000 instead of 10 megaton bombs, the whole society will be forced to live underground. But that the destructive strength of thermonuclear bombs will always remain greater than the depth of the caves, that the military will become dominant, in fact if not in law, that fright and hatred of a possible aggressor will destroy the basic attitudes of a democratic, humanistic society. In other words, the continued arms race, even if it would not lead to the outbreak of a thermonuclear war, would lead to the destruction of any of those qualities of our society which can be called democratic, free, or in the American tradition. Orwell demonstrates the illusion of the assumption that democracy can continue to exist in a world preparing for nuclear war, and he does so imaginatively and brilliantly. Another important aspect is Orwell's description of the nature of truth, which on the surface is a picture of Stalin's treatment of truth, especially in the 30s. But anyone who sees in Orwell's description only another denunciation of Stalinism is missing an essential element of Orwell's analysis. He is actually talking about a development which is taking place in the Western industrial countries also, only at a slower pace than it is taking place in Russia and China. The basic question which Orwell raises is whether there is any such thing as truth, reality. So the ruling party holds is not external. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else. Whatever the party holds to be truth is truth. If this is so, then by controlling men's minds, the party controls truth. In a dramatic conversation between the protagonist of the party and the beaten rebel, a conversation which is a worthy analogy to Dostoevsky's conversation between the Inquisitor and Jesus, the basic principles of the party are explained. In contrast to the Inquisitor, however, the leaders of the party do not even pretend that their system is intended to make man happier, because men, being frail and cowardly creatures, want to escape freedom and are unable to face the truth. The leaders are aware of the fact that they themselves have only one aim, and that is power. To them, power is not a means, it is an end. And power means the capacity to inflict unlimited pain and suffering to another human being. Power, then, for them creates reality. It creates truth. The position which Orwell attributes here to the power elite can be said to be an extreme form of philosophical idealism, but it is more to the point to recognize that the concept of truth and reality, which exists in 1984, is an extreme form of pragmatism, in which truth becomes subordinated to the party. An American writer, Alan Harrington, who in Life in the Crystal Palace gives a subtle and penetrating picture of life in a big American corporation, has coined an excellent expression for the contemporary concept of truth: mobile truth. If I work for a big corporation which claims that its product is better than that of all competitors, the question whether this claim is justified or not in terms of ascertainable reality becomes irrelevant. What matters is that, as long as I serve this particular corporation, this claim becomes my truth, and I decline to examine whether it is an objectively valid truth. In fact, if I change my job and move over to the corporation which was until now my competitor, I shall accept a new truth, that its product is the best, and subjectively speaking, this new truth will be as true as the old one. It is one of the most characteristic and destructive developments of our own society that man, becoming more and more of an instrument, transforms reality more and more into something relative to his own interests and functions. Truth is proven by the consensus of millions. To the slogan, "How can millions be wrong?" is added, and "How can a minority of one be right?" Orwell shows quite clearly that in a system in which the concept of truth as an objective judgment concerning reality is abolished, anyone who is a minority of one must be convinced that he is insane.